So with that, does it come back to you now?
No, we'll call the meeting to order and do a pledge of allegiance.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to clarify for,
Would you like to establish just the honor of the invocation pledge?
we're not,
Oh,
there's no,
God, thanks for bringing us all together. Give us some wisdom and representing the citizens of Orange County in transportation matters and complicated and sometimes fun budget numbers. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
So Mike, does that put you in the hot seat for the
Roll call.
I just want to clarify for the committee, the quorum is 8 people.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we're going to make both, so.
Okay.
I'm going to start with San Joaquin Hills. Chairman Shuffle, Vice Chair Chun.
Here.
Director Bartlett.
Here.
Director Caruth.
Here.
Director Ferguson.
Here.
Director Hack.
Here.
Director Davies.
Here.
Director Monahan. Director Piotr.
Here.
Director Sachs.
Here.
Director Shea.
Yes.
Director Spitzer. Thank you. Director Ward. So you have a quorum for San Joaquin Hills. For Foothill, Chairman Young, Vice Chair Bartlett.
Here.
Director Beal.
Here.
Director Ferguson.
Here.
Director Crane.
Here.
Director Murphy. Director Nelson. Director Puckett. Director Rass.
Here.
Director Schoeffel. Director Shea.
Yes.
Director Spitzer.
Here.
Director Voits. Director Ward. You only have 6 for Foothill Eastern. 7. Scott may still, he was supposed to be here, so he may arrive.
Who's here? How about if you're an alternate for public board, like Ed's an alternate?
Read the public.
Yeah, but you're both here for your city, so.
Probably give you an alternate for someone else.
Sorry.
You want to do agenda description?
I volunteer him for a
So item 2, at this time, members of the public may address the Board of Directors regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board of Directors, but no action may be taken on off-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes for all comments unless the chairman, subject to the approval of the board, sets a different time limit. To the clerk, do we have any requests for public comment?
No, we don't.
So that moves us to the consent calendar, item 3. And there are no items for discussion under the consent calendar, so item 4, committee business, for San Joaquin Hills Transportation Quarter Agency Fiscal Year 2016 Annual Budget. Ms. Potter.
Thank you. So actually we will be going through both items at the same time, so it's both the Foothill Eastern and San Joaquin Hills budgets that we'll be reviewing today. And this is basically the same presentation that you've received before, but we have cut it down. And we have made a few changes to the expenditures, but I will point those out when I get to the expenditure section. So we'll be going through the same items, the toll rates, the sources and uses, the debt service coverage, and cash as a result of the proposed budget, and then the next steps. So a highlight of what's included in this budget, as far as the toll rates go, we are recommending inflationary toll rate increases for both agencies. That's a 2% increase, and I'll get through a little more detail on that when we get to that section. But that will result in a 1 cent to 6 cent increase on the Foothill Eastern, which would then result in a 3.4% revenue increase and a 1.4% transaction increase. On San Joaquin Hills, those inflationary toll rate increases would range between 2 cents and 13 cents, and that would result in a 3.1% revenue increase and a 1.3% transaction increase. Another area that we'd like to highlight is the salaries and benefits, and for both boards combined, that will result in a $400,000 decrease compared to the prior year budget. And as we discussed during the workshop, it's actually a decrease for the Foothill Eastern of $700,000 and an increase for the San Joaquin Hills of $300,000, and that is a result of a shift in the allocations, and mainly due to the fact that we are not budgeting 2 key positions that have been allocated almost 100% to Foothill Eastern. Also, these budgets will meet our debt service coverage requirements and also will result in significant cash reserves. So when we put this budget together, we have a number of goals and initiatives in mind, and so we have continued our cost containment strategy, and this is year 3 of 3 of our compensation reform. So as of July 1st, 2015, all employees will be picking up 100% of their employee contribution to their OSERS pension, and then also the other items that we had put in place as well as part of that reform. We also need to continue to increase our cash reserves and work towards improving our credit rating. Also working on improving customer service, and this will include operational efficiencies and the staffing plan, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the toll operations section, and also education to the rental car and tourism industries. And then we also have the goal of expanding the system to serve our customer base and benefit regional mobility. And so that would include several projects on the Foothill Eastern, mainly the 241-91 connector, and then also the Tesoro extension and our long-range planning for the 241. And on San Joaquin Hills, this is not really our project, but our coordination with Caltrans and OCTA on their project for the 405 project, which would also include a connection to the 73. And then also our continued commitment to the sustainability initiatives that benefit the environment. So that is our environmental mitigation programs and the continuation of those. So moving on to toll rates. So on both the Foothill Eastern and the San Joaquin Hills, we looked at several scenarios, and what we are proposing is a 2% fast track increase. Next slide. And you see that result here. So here is the result for Foothill Eastern of how we analyzed those various increases. And so the top line represents the revenue increase, and the bottom line represents the transaction increase. And so as I mentioned, this would result in a 3.4% revenue increase and a 1.4% transaction increase.
Amy, hold on a second. How do you want to answer questions? Do you want to go through you or just?
What's the protocol at this point?
I think just do it more.
Well, I just want to recognize by the chairs, we stay maintain order. You're going to be talking about, I just looked ahead, you're going to be talking about tolls a lot. Can you at least couch this in terms of the Stantec traffic and revenue, so we have some context? So far, the way you've been phrasing it, Amy, is kind of we have been, I'm thinking internal staff, as opposed to what is quote-unquote scientists.
Yeah.
You know, so could you help us, what's the context for this with the TNR?
So we work with our traffic and revenue consultant annually. So even though it's not a requirement, as it was in the past with San Joaquin, but we still work with the consultant every year to analyze the results of the prior year increases and the effect on both the revenues and the transactions on the road. And then also looking forward to how we may need to adjust rates in various locations to not only benefit the usage of the road and the drivers, but also obviously the revenues and the transaction increase. Also, we take into consideration our bond indentures and the financing, and so the traffic and revenue studies that we utilize in order to finance the roads. And so that is where Those traffic and revenue studies have included or have incorporated inflationary type increases or assumptions as far as toll rate increases, because we do need to continue our commitment to meeting our bond requirements. There are a number of other factors that we take into consideration as well, such as economic factors. So the traffic and revenue consultant assists us with that as well. And so looking at a time when you can make some small increases versus times where we may decide that we won't be able to make an increase if we're in an economic downturn. And then other factors as well that figure into the basis for our consideration of making a recommendation would be the assumption of making small increases more frequently rather than waiting and making a larger lump sum increase. And part of the reason that we can now do this is that since we've gone to all electronic tolling, we no longer have to worry about doing quarter increment increases on the road, which in the past would sometimes delay the rate increase, and then we would get to a point where you'd have to make a pretty substantial increase. So,
so the results you see in the table that you're looking at, or the chart that you're looking at here, these are the results of the traffic and revenue consultants analysis, and staff's recommendation and the traffic and revenue consultant's recommendation are the same. Both staff and the TNR consultant are recommending the 2% increase.
I'm just jumping ahead a little bit to your slide 16. You don't have to go there, but you seem to have like 4 bullet rationales for why we'd be doing these increases.
yes.
I just want to, listen, I've been here a long time, and a lot of us have, and we've seen where the indenture requires us to raise tolls to meet certain financial requirements and commitments, but the economy wouldn't support that. So I think what you're trying to say, or you have said it, and I just didn't hear it differently, is given the economy now, and we seem to be turning a corner, at least there seems to be a lot more consumer confidence, we need to take advantage of that, but I want to make sure we're taking advantage of it, rationalizing back to the indenture, as opposed to exploiting it because we're trying to increase our, I want to make sure no matter what we do on tolls, and I think we've had these conversations consistently in this agency, that we can point to a logical rationale and a justification as opposed to we're doing it because we can.
Yeah. So the results that we said, so in concert with basically the refinancings that we put in place and the escalating debt service structure that we have, basically the structure that we put in place, one of the premises of that is inflationary toll increases. This versus, for example, in San Joaquin Hills, where we were doing, like last year, we did a 10% increase in San Joaquin Hills. So what
At the main line or across the whole thing?
At the main line peak hour. That was a 10% increase. So what we're recommending here, if you go back to the analysis slide. So in looking at the different scenarios that we presented, which were much more simplified this year, and I think reflects the simplification, reflects both the conversion to all electronic tolling, as well as the new finance, the new debt service structure that we have in place. So we looked at these 4 scenarios. So in our analysis of that, where we're able to then increase up to a 3.4% increase in revenue, yet still attracting more traffic to the road. So a 1.4 increase in transactions. So it was very important to us that we increase transactions on the road in what we bring as our recommendation to you. If we looked at a further increase, a 2.5% increase, there was a very marginal increase in revenue, but a more significant drop in the amount of transactions which we would bring to the road. Therefore, that's why we're recommending to you today the 2% increase. It's basically that combination of meeting the structure that we put in place, which is inflationary toll increases. Also in now the second year since the restructure, is important in terms of our overall strategy to improve our credit rating, that we also follow those increases that we built into the structure and attract more traffic to the road. So this recommendation that we're bringing to you today accomplishes all of those goals, and we feel that it really hit a sweet spot with this 2% increase, and so it's kind of hitting on all cylinders in terms of the goals that we're trying to achieve at the agency.
So as Mike just mentioned, so these are this is the basis for our recommendation, and so I think we can move on to the next slide. And so for Foothill Eastern, this translates into a $4.3 million increase in revenue. And then as you see, the transactions increased by 1.4% as well. And so these are the actual rates for Foothill Eastern, several pages here through those.
So the reason why we give you the detail of all the exact rates is, as part of approving the budget next week, includes approval of the new rate schedule for the roads.
Can you explain why some are greater than others?
They're all
Springs raise more than others.
It's a larger basis, so it's basically a 2% across the board. So if it's $1, it would be then $1.02. If it's $2, it would go to $2.04. It's across the board flat percentage increase at all locations.
Amy, for giving an additional 1.3 million in revenue, what percentage of our bond payments is that differential from the prior year?
We'll have to get.
What I'm trying to get at is if we have X dollars, say just to give you an example, $4 million in this year. Next year, our payments are going to increase by 500,000. So we're increasing the payments that we have to make by 500,000, but we're getting an additional here of 4.3. I just want that ratio.
Okay.
I want to know what that is. But I know that we're factoring in credit rating increase and that type of thing. But we're just going to get a comparison.
Okay. I think you can move on to the next slide because this is the same. And so here are the results for San Juan King. So the top line, once again, the revenue increase, and the bottom line is the transaction increase, and so the 2% results in the 3.1% revenue increase and a 1.3% transaction increase. And then just like Mike had pointed out on Foothill Eastern, you can see that you only marginally gain a very small amount on revenue, but you lose some more transactions when you go up a little higher. So that's that, as well as all the goals that we mentioned. And the other basis for our recommendation is what we're proposing here.
Can I
Sharon, quick question. Sorry, Todd.
No, go ahead.
How come it doesn't say 2% in that two? The blue diamonds are not the same as the bottom category.
Scott, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, the average total is shown as being 1.8%, but we're increasing to 2%.
We are increasing the fast track rate by 2%, and then we are increasing the non-fast track rate to maintain the dollar differential, so it'll still be $1 more for non-fast track accounts or transactions. And so this is the average toll rate.
So you're telling me that on the Foothill, it was the same 2%, but on this it's not?
It did show that. I don't know. Dave, do you have any questions? Might have to do with this.
I think it's the
The
calculation.
mainline and the,
I
yeah,
think it's the calculation in the mix of different contracts.
right. And there might be just a little bit of distortion there because
And
of,
rounding.
yeah, well,
First one, I'm gonna-
and just what happens
Sounds
with
like
the
a good government speak. It's allowed.
Yes.
What's the million here and then?
But we can.
We can round it right up.
Calculate that
Yeah.
number, but no use to just double check that number, because it should be slightly less than the increase because
You're not adding 2% on the bottom.
we're not right.
Right.
Can we go back to slide 11, please? Can we have a conversation, or can you explain to us the ramps in our communities as opposed to a main line, for example, Windy Ridge? To me, Windy Ridge is a commuter main line peak because it's mostly people coming in from the inland. Whereas our ramps are the people that vote for us in our communities and the people we are elected to represent. what did you do in terms of testing the elasticity at the main line vis-a-vis Windy Ridge to see if we could eke out differentials there without shedding people off the road? Like, so looking at the elasticity analysis, I don't know, I haven't drilled down that deep on it. But I would like to know what the sensitivity is on Windy Ridge where we raise to a certain point where we don't divert all the way to the 55, but we can then maybe fight to keep our local in the community tolls flat. Because people like Tony, you know, Federal Ranch, Portola Hills, Rancho, that whole corridor to the north, I remember years of they're just getting hammered. Tomato Springs. And they don't have a lot of options because they're so far against the mountain, into the canyon. Like, you know, to go all the way down to Toll Road or go down all the way. It's really a pain to get to the 5. So they don't have as many options. They're kind of captive.
Right.
So I would like to see whether we could maintain some kind of, but utilize the main line if you have enough transactions.
Yes.
Without divert. I don't know the answer to that.
So, we know the answer to that to a degree, but not to the degree that we would like to. So one of the things that is included in this year's budget is what we call, what's the word trying to use? Toll balancing or toll inequity. What we are planning to do this year is, with the addition of additional data that we have programmed to get additional data on origin and destinations and usage and actually parallel route usage as well, then we want to look overall, because over all of those years of having the quarter differentials at each location, it's kind of resulted in some imbalances between different ramp locations where you had to do a quarter and maybe you only really needed to do 13 cents and things like that. So what we want to do is get better data and over the next year study exactly that issue to see if there is a toll balancing element to
yeah, but Mike, if you look at slide 7, okay, the graph that you've shown us for both roads, which is how much you raise, and you can see the revenue diversion, you can see revenue over trip diversion.
Right.
That was derived by doing an algorithm, by throwing all this into a data dump and then making an algorithm out of it.
Right.
What I'm saying is clearly Stantec knows they've done that for each ramp and each main line.
Right.
You can't, Sonnenschein or whatever the heck his name is. What's that guy's name? Abishai. Sonnenschein is the justice of the public, right? He can tell us what the main line can handle. Okay,
no, I agree.
Right? We can get that.
Yes.
So we could see, but what we need to say is, let's say instead of raising 2%, we went 5% main line. I'm just making this up. But we added multi-axle, okay? Because the truck trips. Let me tell you, we are importing trash into this county from other counties like crazy, and they have to go to Bowerman. They're not going to go all the way around. I'm telling you, they're not. Their time is worth money. So why wouldn't we take advantage of those truck trips that are going to Bowerman landfill over the 241?
Yeah.
So maybe we do it on multiple axle vehicles. And then, but again, I would like to see you give us a scenario where we don't have to raise our local community on-ramps.
Okay. We didn't analyze that this year. We did a lot of that last year. I guess we can kind of answer that. We can certainly answer the question as you've asked it. I believe we will be better informed after we do more of this whole balancing study in terms of giving you that broader picture and maybe a more comprehensive look at it after we've done that study this year, to look at it more that way next year and keep it simple this year in terms of the across the board small 1 cent to 6 cent increases on
and also light. So we did look at some of that as well with the traffic and revenue consultant. However, being that this is really the first year after AET and there might be some changes with patterns, we don't know. We talked to the consultant about it, that we thought this year it would be safer to just do this across the board, like he said, and then do a further study for next year. So that we did think about some of that when we were putting this together.
Just thinking.
What we looked at.
Does thinking count?
Well, your predecessor, Rush Hill, was furious about Newport Coast, and he was always raising that issue about there was some issue about Newport Coast on this. But I remember
Yeah,
we were all
that segment per mile is more expensive than any other segment on the toll.
okay with that. Okay, so that right. Okay, fine. That was the factoid, and so that's important for us to think about.
Well, and I think that's the basis for this toll balancing study that we're proposing to do this year.
But we're gonna bring those to committees too, I mean, we're
It'll come
gonna
through
spend a
co-op.
lot of time.
Yeah.
I agree with that, I think it's important to look at.
I agree with him as well, I think it's important to look at. One question I have is, typically when we increase tolls, doesn't our traffic and revenue study show that there would be a diversion or reduction in the amount of transactions? What I'm seeing here is no matter how much we raise it, we're still getting an increased number. Is that correct? Is that unusual this year?
Yeah, well, in previous years, with the recommendations we've had to bring to you in order to get the revenue we needed to meet that much higher rate of debt service increase, we were recommending increases like 6%, 10%. They were resulting in negative numbers, meaning we were diverting traffic away from the road. That's why since we've done the restructures, it's very important to us in the recommendations we bring to you that we increase traffic on the road, not divert traffic off the road. So previous years, 2 years ago, the recommendation we brought to Budget Eastern was around 6%, and that showed negative traffic.
Let's move on to the next slide. So these are basically the same goals or I guess factors that we take into consideration. Although on San Joaquin, one other thing that we wanted to look at this year is making sure that we demonstrated the board's commitment to the refinance goals, given that we are in the first year of the refinance.
So what is the actual 2% on the San Joaquin amount at the,
Like at Catalina View?
Catalina, right.
13 cents peak.
13 cents, so you're maximizing it is?
That would be the maximum increase, would be 13 cents at Catalina View, and we can go to that slide.
So really what you're saying is those people who are not carrying fast track are what, 15, 17, 18?
So non-fast track peak hour will go from $7.65 an hour to $7.78, increasing 13 cents. And fast track peak hour will go from $6.65 to $6.78, also a 13% increase. And then non-fast track pre and post peak hours, also the 13, same as fast track. So 13 cents basically during the peak hours.
So are you using toll policy to push people to AET and fast track?
Surely.
No. Well, I'm asking if you're doing it across the board homogeneously, then maybe you're not. I'm just asking. Are you? If you're just moving everybody at the same rate, then you are not as incentivizing people. Because
the dollar differential is still there. So that would encourage people to go to fast track, because that's still we discount the fast track rate $1 in each location. So we would still be incentivizing people to go to a fast track.
Are we, in our message signing, situation that we're dealing with, are we articulating that in any messaging, Lisa, in our program that we all revisited recently, right? Aren't you going on you're doing all these focus groups and all that?
Right.
Are we gonna ask the question in that deliberation whether that dollar differential makes changes in behavior and if we should put those in signages?
We are going to be asking about existing signage to understand that existing signage and then showing them alternatives to see if it communicates better. If one, they realize they're on a toll road, two, they realize they need to do something to pay or have an account. We are not looking at, that's the first level. The way we educate about the different price differentials really through the sign-up process, and when you're deciding what's the best account for me, we have tools on the website to tell you the different factors to consider, and certainly the dollar differential is one of them to consider. And what we like to tell people is that you have fast track and you drive just 4 times, and people are concerned about the monthly fee for fast track, but if you take 4 trips on the toll roads a month, you're gonna even out because of the dollar differential. So it's part of the messaging when people are making a decision about which to choose. Okay, next. So just scrolling through the rest of the rates, so unless there are any other discussion on toll rates, we'll move on. Sources and uses. So for Foothill Eastern, we are proposing $169.1 million in revenue and $161 million in expenditures. The largest piece of the revenue is obviously the toll revenue, and that's what we just discussed. We also have other revenues proposed related to penalties of $14.3 million, fees, account maintenance fees, and other fees that we receive from arrangements that we have with San Francisco Airport and a rent car agency, $13 million, development impact fees of $15 million, interest income of $2.7 million, and $400,000 from the San Joaquin Hills for rent for the use of this building. And the basis for most of those numbers are the historical or recent historical trends related to our collections in those various areas. And the one thing I wanted to point out, because I know we had a lot of discussion about this on penalties, is that that is based on the pre-AET trend of what we were actually collecting. And as a reminder, the importance of the violation program is to serve as a deterrence so that we can then collect all of the toll revenue that we are entitled to. And so we had sent out a follow-up, we sent out some follow-up information related to those trends, and so if there's any other discussion on that. Otherwise, I'll move on to the expenditures.
So the $8 million is the differential from expenditures to revenues. Where does that go, and where are you going to get into that? That would be a great one. On the expenditures.
No, that's surplus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think we'll be discussing the expenditures in detail, so I'd like to move on to the next slide. In addition to the revenues that we proposed, we have other sources, and so these are presented here in front of you. The largest of those other sources is the unrestricted cash, and so this is for the Foothill Eastern. Next slide. So here is the San Joaquin Hills proposed budget for revenues and expenditures. We are proposing $152.7 million of revenues and $124.3 million of expenditures. Next slide.
Can somebody tell me real quick on that slide? Why are the penalties 4% higher on the San Joaquin? Why are we seeing about the same ratio of penalties?
It's always.
Yeah, and so it's really, and that is really that analysis that we provided where we looked at what we were actually collecting. And I don't know if I can answer the real reason as to why the two roads are different. I mean, we can speculate on
There's more
why.
scufflaws that live in the coastal part.
They buy more new cars than they know they can buy without cars.
They're richer and smart.
It's always been higher.
It has.
Always been higher?
Yes.
That's interesting. We'll figure out why.
Lisa's being very quiet.
I have another study about that. Spend some money on that.
So on San Joaquin, in addition to our revenues, we have other sources as well. And here, this is now where San Joaquin has an opportunity to start building up its unrestricted cash, just like the Foothill Eastern. And so now that we have refinanced the debt and we've removed some of the restrictions, I'll show you as we go through the process that our revenues will continue to build up these reserves. So looking at the expenditure, is there a
We have sums that are required reserves that are, we will go through through that.
So that is in seven,
Yeah, it's in, yeah, we have a section that we talk about all the surplus and all the reserves.
Okay, so on the expenditures, here's where I will point out some changes that we have made since we last presented this budget to you at the workshops. And the changes are in areas of toll operations and administration. The changes to toll operations really are based on two different areas that we need to adjust. And one is a result of our procurement for the interim back office system maintenance contract. And so when we first presented these numbers to you, we were using our own estimates. And now that we've gone through that process and we have received proposals, we have a better idea. And so we increased the budget between both agencies by approximately $400,000. And so on the Foothill Eastern, that share is $275,000. On the San Joaquin, it's $135,000. The other area that we increased in toll operations is for transponders, and this is actually a board item that is coming to you next week, and it relates to a very important, it's the rental car client, but it's really, I mean, how do you describe it though, Samuel? It was...
Yeah, so one of our largest account holders is actually a third-party fleet manager known as Highway Toll Administration. So they have about 48,000 transponders from TCA, and they requested very recently up to another 15,000. We had not included in our transponder procurement plan that kind of extra capacity, so we had to make a budget adjustment to try and be responsive to one of our high-value customers.
Okay. And so the other area that we adjusted was administration, and the on Foothill Eastern, the largest portion of this related to consulting services, and once again, this was based on an original estimate that we had for strategic communications, and based on cost proposals, we needed to adjust that. We adjusted it by around $450,000. The other area that we adjusted in administration was marketing. We had originally, for a marketing consulting contract, we had originally proposed $1.3 million, and based on feedback from the marketing ad hoc committee, we increased that by $200,000 to be shared among the two agencies. Another area that we adjusted, but was a very minor amount, were the insurance and payroll processing services, and this related to the fact that we will be bringing on the operations folks, so the customer service and image processing employees who are currently contracted out, we will be bringing them on as on an interim basis as TCA staff, and so this was just one of those areas where we just refined our cost estimate. Next slide. So here's San Joaquin's budget, and really it's just the relative amounts there. So San Joaquin's increased by $300,000. So on Foothill Eastern, the first category, toll operations, so we talked about this in detail at our last meeting, both workshops and also on some of the individual briefings. But the first line, the total customer service and compliance, that is mainly those temporary staff that I had just mentioned that used to be contracted staff. Also, it's all of our other processing costs like credit card fees, postage and printing, and all the other things related to the customer service and image processing. The toll systems line is...
Question, when we're doing the switchover, we're really moving money from the category where we're paying for vendors to employees, right? It's still under toll operations, but yet we're still going up $2 million, or in this case, $700,000 for toll systems. So we're going up $2 million total here in the eastern corridor for all the toll systems. that $2 million is not just because we're switching over and carrying 3M's employees.
So part of it, for example, on the toll systems, that's our on-road equipment. And in 2015, this fiscal year, we were in the AEP implementation, so the maintenance of that equipment was covered by the installation contract. So we had final acceptance on that last month, which was 3 months later than we had projected. So we didn't have to pay for maintenance while they were still doing the installation.
And that's why the amended budget and the actuals went down and we're going back up to the amended.
Yep. So that one was really stays flat budget to budget, and that's basically the 10-year contract for the contract, what that would be. It's just we didn't have to pay for as many months last year as we expected. And then in the customer service, that's all of the things we talked about. So that's the additional transponders, it's the systems, meaning back office systems contract is in there, as well as the customer service. And the additional, we had upped it during the year, so then we're having another additional part of that is for the systems contract, so the back office systems interim vendor costs for that. The other part of it.
So it also includes, when you look at where we thought we'd end up for FY15, one of the key things for FY15 was the increase in staff that we needed to manage our increased workload in our new business model. So we thought some of that would be an initial spike, and some of it was, but our work volumes remain a lot higher than they were prior to the AG. So the customer service and compliance, the staffing portion of that assumes that 121 positions are about that number that we present to the board, that we maintain that throughout FY16.
So in other words, a lot of the increases due to the AET switchover.
Yeah.
Just more than anticipated.
Yes.
So next year we can expect that it won't be
Can't hear the question.
I can't hear.
so that next year we will not anticipate a spending in all total operations.
We're still working to settle out a lot of our operations in our new business model. We definitely don't expect to have no type of increase. We have two major contracts that we're going to be going out for during the fiscal year. As I mentioned earlier, one of the adjustments we've made between the April 4 workshops and today involves the interim system, the legacy system maintenance that we contracted out. We had done a good job, or the best job we thought we could, in estimating the cost of that contracting out. We got the numbers and the salaries right, but the cost of contracting itself with overhead and profit, that required us to adjust our line item. So I can't say with absolute certainty that we won't have some impacts. When we come with the FY17 budget, our hope is that we will.
That you expect it to be what, or you will reach what would be its minimum.
I think so. We're definitely getting smarter as we go. So one thing we're feeling more and more confident about every day is the number of personnel that we have in customer service operations, and that's the 121 people I mentioned shortly a little while ago. That's feeling like a right fit, but part of that is that whole discussion we're going to come back to the board with in August at our operations workshops to talk about performance measures, our work volumes, all those things should drive staffing. So it could be that staff, we're looking at certain performance criteria, but when we present to the board, you may want to do something different that could affect cost as well.
I thought we hired you, Samuel, to have all the answers.
That was the answer.
You did a great job.
I was going to say it's only been 3 months.
Okay, only 3 months.
And here is San Joaquin's share of those same items that we just discussed for Foothill Eastern. So moving on to the next category, planning, environmental, and construction. So for the Foothill Eastern, this would include our Tesoro Extension project, the 241-91 connector, and 241 long-range planning. Also, toll plaza facility, we have a reuse study and a toll booth removal project that we have planned. Also, continuation of the wildlife fencing project and enhanced signage, and also the traffic trends and capacity analysis that Mike talked about when we were talking about toll rates, and a toll plaza water service project that is actually approved to the board.
Already did.
Okay.
Didn't it come already, did? We approved it in the last budget. Is there another one at Tomato Springs?
Tomato Springs, that was actually included in the capital improvement plan, but it's included in the next year's budget.
We approved the capital improvement.
Yeah, it's just as a priority, and then we're funding it through the budget, right?
Oh, you smart pants directors.
Yeah, we don't have full-time staff, but
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Biotter.
So here is San Joaquin's capital budget, and so you see here that we just have the toll plaza facility improvement, so that's the study and also toll booth removal, the signage improvements, environmental mitigation programs, and our traffic study, the traffic trending study.
Both Foothill and San Juan share the cost of the fencing, right? Don't we?
No.
Oh, just that's
Just Foothill.
Foothill project. Okay. And then the last category, administration. So this is where we have our salaries and benefits, and then on the Foothill Eastern, we also have administrative costs related to our capital improvement program, so that's the consulting and also legal costs. We also have, for Foothill Eastern, costs related to maintaining this building here, since Foothill Eastern owns that building. Also, for both agencies, all of our insurance costs and marketing, and that's where I mentioned that that was the item that we increased based on the recommendation from the marketing ad hoc committee. We have our other consulting, which includes all of our financial consulting, and our legal and other building services.
We don't skip that. Question. Mike, I guess you handed out this outreach roster. Is this the appropriate time? Does this come under marketing, or was it come under?
It's under marketing/website for that.
So this is the right time? So, do you guys, does everybody have this list? I don't remember.
I sent it yesterday.
Yeah.
If anyone wants an additional copy.
There's a list of everybody we have a membership with and things like that. I have some questions.
I brought that up.
Did you already bring it up?
Well, yeah, but I didn't get anywhere with it, but I did bring it up.
Well, well, I don't know where you're at, so if it's being handed out, let me ask you if I can start. All right, so tell me, what is the philosophy behind, before I get into specific questions, what is the philosophy? Because it seems like we're a member of every organization in God's green country.
So there's a number of different here. So basically the chamber memberships is basically because we've got 17 cities, so we, like in your cities, you would be part of or support your chambers, so we support the chambers for the cities that have chambers that are members of our agency.
All right, so let me ask you this. How do you rationalize the chairman's circle that seems more expensive in Laguna Niguel than your garden variety membership in Rancho Santa Margarita?
Okay. So
which
what
is tenfold difference.
Right. So the difference is what's included in those. So for example, the Laguna Niguel, who by the way is the largest revenue producing city in our system, is
the chamber is, or the people who live in the community?
There. Yeah.
Well, not the chamber.
Not the chamber. But they include things like that. Includes different functions during the year that are included in their fee versus some of the ones that charge, like Tustin charges hardly anything, but yet you pay for each event separately. So it's just the way they structure what's included in the fee versus what you pay a la carte during the year to attend different
So
events.
these don't include the a la carte expenses?
Correct.
But there are a la carte expenses.
When we go to
Dinners, right?
state of the cities and
Yeah, we
things
don't
like
see that in this. That gets in a catch-all, in a budget line item?
Correct. Correct. That's in the budget that you're approving today, those amounts, but not to the detailed.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and then our Orange County memberships are basically then the broader county-wide things like OCBC, ACCOC, and then South Orange County Economic Coalition. Those are, the biggest ones there. There's OC Move, which is...
What is OC Move?
So
We tried to find it on a website, can't find it anywhere.
Yeah. So basically OC Moves, that's being chaired by Chris Murray from Anaheim. It's basically focused on mobility and transportation agenda here in the county.
Is it a Brown Act commit group?
No. It's similar to ACC. It's affiliated with OCBC, who does that. That's basically the group that primarily supported like Measure M and things like that.
What are they doing now?
So right now we're working more on mobility issues. They're very supportive to this agency in terms of our agenda, in terms of trying to solve the mobility problems in the county and things like that. So, for example, if we need to work with that group to educate them about what we're doing, and in turn, needing support from them, that they're...
How many of you in here, other electeds, you sound like you're familiar with OC Moves?
OC Moves is an advocacy group that was a spin-off from OCBC. It's the more edgy group, it's involved in more advocacy and other things. OCBC
well, specifically to transportation.
Right, exactly. More controversial things in transportation.
So basically what you're saying is OCBC is picking up 25 grand and Moves is picking up 20 grand?
Yeah.
45 grand?
Yeah, I know. That's
Yeah,
For what?
and ACCOC is what, how much is that one?
10.
I think this is just outrageous, to be honest with you.
Well, I guess the question would be, if we removed ourselves just for a year, suspended membership for a year, what are we anticipating would be the impact? Does that mean they're not going to show up and help us out when we need advocacy, or what's the impact?
Or the opposite, what have they been doing to help us?
So,
What question you want?
You don't want to answer those questions.
Well, maybe you
right?
can.
I think we would still end up with the advocacy only because between OCBC, ACCOC, OC Moves, and those other groups, there's so much overlap in the membership that I think they would still draw and we would probably still get support. It's more political.
and I think those advocacy efforts by these organizations require funding, if you will, and so this is...
I know, but this is the disconnect, okay? Like, look, I'm a big believer that you should support groups like, I'm not giving you, the reason, I'm not asking these questions to give you grief over it.
Sure.
But I need to understand, I think all of us have a right to know, like, we should be able to see if we're a member of something. First of all, I've never even heard of it, okay? No one's ever even told me it existed. I mean, it's like, I don't know what it does. So I don't know what its mission statement is, or there's also a corporation. I don't know who's on it. I don't know who the executive director is. I don't know how they control money. I mean, you gotta remember something. Every organization you're a part of, I'm not worried about chambers because they have very tight bylaws, but some other organizations that maybe get involved in certain policies that we may not agree, and we're not really, we're like joining, but we have nothing to say about what you do.
Yeah.
So what, I really think it's important for some of the non-traditional, we all know what almost everything is on here, but for like OC Moves, for example, everything else I think is relatively self. Although Cal Travel, I don't know what that is, but some of them that aren't like known entities, you should probably write us a memo.
I would be glad to do that.
Are these salary issues that we're talking about? In other words, are we funding individuals here?
No, we're funding a group.
I understand we're funding a group, but the group is chaired by someone, and are we funding that individual, and to what extent?
Not in the sense of OC Moves, so.
Well,
And then the
but
Cal...
honestly, if I could interrupt, honestly, that is true, because ACCOC, the city of Irvine gives like, I don't know, 20,000 a year too.
We give
But
25.
that goes to staffing and salaries.
Of course it does. Lacey Kelly, I was at their latest meeting, and they have to file their IRS forms. And it's all public. You can look on, shoot, there's a website, it's looking, anyway, anyway. You can look up every 501c3 in the universe and you can see. So Lacey makes about $160,000 base salary. And so of course we pay them, plus their own staff. And the county, we're in for 25 grand, I think. Right, and I have no problem with that, because they're doing phenomenal work in this county. But I want to know where we're putting our money, and I want to know two things. What are we getting?
Yep.
And two, I want to make sure they don't have an agenda that we might disagree with.
Correct, understood. Yes, so listen, the Cal Travel, the other one you mentioned, that's really the concierges and
Well, that's $200
travel
a
people
month.
that are in that one that we know. You know, that's part of our outreach to the rental car and tourism, but OC Moves, that's a great question. I will put together an information.
I thought it was a Zumba club.
So is there any other ones on here that you guys want, kind of that type of thing?
This is something I brought up, is that I suggested, instead of giving big dues to so many, why can't we, as an organization, so we show participation, buy tables for their dinners and activities rather than always, just giving these huge annual sums and then pay. Because like I said, we pay 20-something to ACCLC, and I know they do a good job. I went to one dinner, and even though the city pays $20,000, $25,000, I have to pay for the dinner too. We get nothing. I mean, I find this absolutely ridiculous.
I agree.
And I think someone making a salary of $165,000 is kind of pricey. Why are we paying that kind of
For an
salary?
executive director?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys can take that up, that's your organization, we're just a ancillary member. But ACC, little footnote, is doing some of the most substantive, informative, and best policy work in this county in history. ACC is fantastic, if you want to ask
I
me.
think they do a really good job, but I think the League of Cities does a good job too.
I didn't even know the League of Cities exists.
That's because we don't talk to anybody outside the county.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'll get that information, I'll see.
I just want to make sure it's aligned.
We'll get that. And I agree, their website is hard to find those CVs.
Call it Move It.
Okay.
Well, if they move, let's go off of that. Since we're interested in OC Moves, maybe we have somebody from TCA to be on the board of directors, so we know, we have more of an insight on what's going on.
I think we can do that. All right.
If we want to continue.
Right.
Can I point something out?
Sure.
I don't know, because I was looking at the Orange County memberships and I see the, Hispanic organizations,
right.
But I don't see anything from APAC, from the Asian Pacific Island. I think that's a really growing segment, so I thought take a look at that and see. I know I get a lot of mail and correspondence from them, so.
It's a community that's growing a lot, but also as far as ridership, stop
Maybe we could agree on this, that whoever's in charge of this, I don't know if you want to reach out. We should do an inventory if we're with, are we with, those kinds of groups? There are obviously groups here that are missing. Black Chamber, $300, I mean, that's obviously, I don't know, we probably should be potentially discussing groups we're not participating in.
I think that's a good point.
I don't know who they are because I'm not looking at who's not here, but a good look at, right, it was significant.
So any input that you have on that?
Irvine would be very helpful. Christina's staff, because Irvine's such a melting pot community, they talk to everyone. I would start with them, I don't know what you call it, human resources, or Parks and Rec. Irvine. Yeah, Irvine's
What
called.
are you talking about, having to give us 20,000 too? I mean, and I will say, we're one of the biggest cities to give the most development fees of any city in this county. So we give the most, not.
Oh, that was cool.
I have a question, but I'm just saying it's part of
Ellie?
I'd also like more information about the women's transportation seminar. What is it?
So that's
Sounds kind of sexy.
We're not concerned about men.
Go by WPF. So that's basically a group of, it's kind of a professional engineering group that women in engineering.
Okay, women
engineering.
They exclude the men.
All the transportation.
No, a lot of men are members. I'm a member. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the total of 123,000?
Yep.
That's all we're talking
Let's just
about.
take a break this year.
Yeah, I agree with Tom, as you and I spoke, Mike. I think that it's really important, not so much the chambers, I think it's really important that we join all the chambers. But I want regular updates of what we're getting every other month or quarterly, what we're doing for this cost, what benefit we're getting, what kind of,
Yeah, and typically if we're doing a function associated with these guys, we
You'll let us
kind of list
know.
those in the calendar and show those in the lot. I know that where appropriate, we invite board members to attend as well.
Yeah, and I know you do, but could we just have staff give us like a board meeting update about these, maybe quarterly, about these major, programs that we're in? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to know we're getting the right
And
balance.
we do try and be active on committees and boards, like on ACC, OC, we're on 2 committees with them. One, Valerie's on their environmental committee, and I know Amy's on their
HR and pension.
I'm on the legislative.
yeah, so we do try and be, we don't just send them the checks, we do try and be active and get our money's worth out of these memberships.
Yeah, but I was in Washington, it was Washington.
Yeah,
The
ACCOC, OCBC trip.
Right.
And we met with the Undersecretary of Transportation, Mr. Mendez.
Yep.
Great meeting. I didn't think anybody from TCA was there.
Wasn't there. Yeah.
You know what, Barbara?
We weren't.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we have Orange County presence of that significance, right, excuse me, the business community and government,
right,
it's important for TCA to be there.
Yeah. No, we did get invited to that, and to
Oh,
the
you did?
Sacramento one as well, and the schedule didn't work out for that one.
You don't have enough staff that you can't send somebody to multi-places?
But can't we have even our chairs notified so they would go? Because I know Lisa's done a lot of traveling for us and she does a great job. So.
Did you ask,
Well, I was there representing,
Slack or-
like, the Board of Supervisors, but Lalo was there representing OCTA.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So we wear these different hats.
We should.
no, we're at least
Yeah, I
in the
have
chairs like
attended
Scott or
ACBC's legislative.
Craig.
No, but inviting board members.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I think that's the first step.
Which just takes the burden off you
That'll
guys.
add to the cost. No.
Move on.
Okay.
All right, okay. So, and here is San Joaquin's administrative costs, these are the same as Foothill Eastern, just their share. Next slide. And staffing and compensation summary, so this is, most of this is what we had already presented to you. The FY16 staffing plan would include 68 full-time employees and 2 part-time project employees, which is down from 71 full-time employees and 3 part-time project employees in fiscal year 15. The one item that we did not present to you at the workshops is a reclassification of one position, the Director of Environmental Planning. We are proposing that as part of this budget, and we will also confirm that through our reclassification study. And then as far as recognition for staff and the role that they play in the agency's success, we are proposing a 4% merit pool, which is performance-based. As a reminder, we do not have any step increases or cost of living adjustments here, so it is all based on performance. And we're also proposing a 2% non-base building performance incentive pool. And then I skipped over the salary range adjustment because that would not affect individual salaries. However, it would adjust all of the salary ranges by 2%. And that's where we had mentioned that we have approved, or you approved, a reclassification study where we will have all of the ranges looked at in detail, and that would be proposed as next year's budget change.
So is there a scenario, is this all controlled by Mike?
Which one?
Everything.
Okay, so
Well, 2% is across the board.
2% is across the board.
4% is merit.
4% is based on the performance reviews and then the recommendations of the supervisors based on where they were rated in terms of what individual salary adjustments would be.
So who in the org chart has control of the 4%?
So I would have approval of that, but it would be based on the recommendations of the department.
But like Samuel has, he's completely tried to overtake the entire org chart. If you look at the org chart.
Yeah.
right? Valerie has he stole a ton from Valerie.
And then she got a salary great benefit and we're couple numbers now.
No, but I'm just saying, like, all your execs here, right, like, he's your engineer, she's your environment, I'm just saying, they make recommendations, do you have to sign off on it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my question, that's done. And then, so theoretically, the person could get 8%. Two plus 4 plus 2.
So 2 doesn't affect, that only affects the wages, that doesn't result in any change to any individual salary, it's just the range that their salary needs to
So the
follow.
most is 6%.
Correct. The range does affect
They
salaries.
could get a 4%. That pool that could be slightly higher or lower than that. 4% is the pool, and then the way we award that is based on performance. So someone could get a raise above 4%, but the pool is limited to 4% of all salaries. Average. Yeah. And some people get 0.
Tell me when the Public Records Act request comes in,
Right.
what is the maximum amount we're gonna hear about?
Do you have an idea of what it was last year?
5.5, yeah, I think 5.5%. 5 was the highest that is individual.
So what you said is that out of the pool, not salaries, you put aside a bag that has a little percentage.
Right. And then you force distribute it based on performance. And for example, in last year we had a 4%. We didn't use the whole bag. It was based on performance and the
And then just, yeah, this 2% non-base building performance, that's your pool of money that you give out. Where's that? That's the part I don't like.
Okay.
Where's that?
So that would be based on performance or sustained performance, and with like say a specific achievement or sustained performance over a period of time by an individual. That would give the CEO, usually the recommendations will come through the executive team, or to recognize someone's individual performance. That would be a non-base building, like a spot bonus at the time of an achievement or performance. So that could happen at any time during the year.
And I'm gonna vote for the budget, but I don't like that. It's very arbitrary, it's subjective, and I think, you just have a pot of money you can just give out to whoever you think's.
But isn't that the one like where it was discussed in the compensation manual that on that 2% non-base building performance incentive that you would notify the board, I don't know, formally something if somebody received it or why?
Well, we
never done it before.
We could do that, but the other thing that we would do is we will put in a policy in place of how that program is administered, and I have a draft of that today if people would like to see
Yeah,
that.
could you share with us?
Can I add patiently waiting.
Okay.
You gotta be louder.
It's hard when the chair is sitting behind everybody.
So, I've been dealing with this kind of salary and merit pool for about 45 years or so. It's very typical. What is very rare is when you have a manager come to the signee and say, this person deserves a 25% pay increase. Those are really tough to justify. In my experience, most of these have rarely gone over 1 to 1.5% of what the pool is on average. But imagine for everyone who's over 4%, you've got people with 0 to balance these things out. Sometimes when you go over the pool number, it's to make up for a salary range, but in here they've got the range adjustment already 2%, so you don't need it for those kind of things. It's extraordinary. The only thing I'll say is very, very, very difficult to even ask for above 4%. You've got to have a really solid reason to do that. One of the things I objected to from our HR department more times than not is we had a bell curve where you had to have X number of people in the top area and X number of people in the bottom area. I never had anyone on the bottom of it because I fired him, right? But it didn't make the bell curve look good. So it's typical. It balances out. It's amazing how well it does balance out. I didn't want to give you too much back.
Thank you very much, we appreciate that.
You're very welcome, and I'll bring you both cookies and coffee. So it looks different. The answer to the question could have been how much over 4% can somebody get? Somebody can get 100% of the pool. It's never going to happen. As long as you have 2 people in the department, it's never going to happen. That's all we're saying.
So, and then I think, so here's kind of a draft of what we're proposing of how we would administer the performance incentive. This is similar to what we did last year. We had 2%. It was helpful as managing a team of employees and professional employees that it's typical in the industry that there's a bonus component to compensation in the industries from which we draw the type of people who we employ here at the agency. For example, where this was important was, for example, in the refinancing, it was a very significant achievement for the agency. So you're not going to bump up those salaries a tremendous amount, but you do want the ability to recognize those type of achievements with a non-base building kind of a spot bonus. So it was very useful. Again, with what was authorized in last year's budget for this year, we didn't use 100% of it. I think we used around 90%. So we didn't, just because it's there, it's not, you know, doling out all the money. What we're trying to do is have, it's I think just slightly over $100,000 is really what the pool is.
And then kind of reasonable range on the minimum and maximum. So it's not.
And if anything were outside that range, I would have to come back to the board.
Okay, did you see that, Christina?
Yeah, I see the authorized, yeah, I see that it's 500, 7,500, but again, we've never, I didn't even know about this until this year, so again, you know, I'm going to support the budget. I'm not trying to be punitive to the employees, but I would say that we should have an understanding of who you're giving these out to and what the reason is, and you could maybe do it as a recognition at a meeting or something. I don't know, so it's more
similar to what other agencies like ours are doing. OCPA has
they do the same
an
thing.
incentive bonus program. Sandbag has it. RCPC. So the like agencies to what we are, because I think when you're dealing with professional engineering staff, professional accountants, things like that, it's sort of the norm of the way those industries operate. There's always a...
And if I may, Chairman, one of the most helpful aspects of this formula, if you will, is protecting your valuable employees and not losing them. And that's where the pool money really comes in, especially if you know that one of your top folks, none of those folks against the wall, but one of your top folks is considering leaving. This is very beneficial.
Well, and again, I think my issue is that at the city, we used to, at the end of the year, there'd be like a 1%. They called it a bonus, and our attorney said you can't have public agency, you cannot give bonuses out. So they restructured some other name, and now we just discontinued the practice. So I just want to make sure, even legally, sometimes we're public, sometimes we're private.
Our new HR legal firm helped us draft this policy to make sure we're, because you made a very good point, that you need to do it within guidelines.
And we weren't doing that, right? So that was my major concern.
And this policy will protect you for that, so that we are doing things.
Okay, good. Well, that's, I needed to know that.
And that incentive pool is part of the retention, a good retention plan for the agency.
If we do a good job, could you give us this aside?
I don't know.
Before we wrap this up, I favor this program. I think it responds to all the objectives we've spoken of, specifically non-base building, our effort to making sure we're not building into that base salary, and encourages excellence in performance. And I think it's a way to build the organization that and keep our great employees, keep us staff in the industry.
I agree.
Give you 2 minutes to finish.
Okay.
Next slide, thank you.
Next slide, and after that. So last part of the budget is really just wrapping up the effect of all of these proposed revenues and expenditures and the result then to our debt service coverage calculation and also our resulting reserves. So first slide here is the Foothill Eastern's debt service coverage calculation based on this proposed budget, and it exceeds our requirements. So for the aggregate coverage ratio, we're expecting it to be 1.24 compared to the 1.15 requirement, and the senior at 1.42 compared to the 1.3. Next slide. And on San Joaquin, that's 1.26 for the aggregate compared to 1.1, and 1.48 compared to the 1.3 times.
So just quick question and clarification. This is like a interest earning loan that we're using, and this is, because I see a slide in here that you have before as far as how our debt payments are going. But at the end of the bond, if we proceed with the same financing goal 40 years, it's going to...
Yes, absolutely. So these are the Foothill Eastern's restricted construction funds. So as you recall, we just refunded the 1995 bonds and it resulted in a $33.5 million present value savings. We took those funds, put them into a restricted construction fund to be used for projects over the next mainly 3 years, but 3 to 5 years. And so this is our expectation based on this budget that we proposed as to the use of those funds for next year. And so we would draw those funds down to about $22.5 million. Slide. And this slide represents the unrestricted cash for the Foothill Eastern. And we are expecting to start the year at $158 million. And then based on the expenditures that we're proposing for construction and the related administrative costs, and also the revenues that we expect to receive, which are the development impact fees and surplus revenues after paying all of the operating costs and debt service payments. And so we expect to have $185.4 million at the end of the year. And what we've done here is we've also earmarked a portion of those other restricted construction funds that would be used for projects other than the 24191 in Tesoro, because it was the board's choice to ensure that those were the priority projects for the $33.5 million funds. So we will be spending them on any qualified project, because for tax purposes we need to spend them, 85% of them within 3 years. But what we've done here is we're earmarking some of the unrestricted cash to show that we will keep our commitment to spend it on those projects. Next slide is the San Joaquin's unrestricted cash. We are expecting to start the year at $31.5 million. And this is where I mentioned that now that we have refinanced the debt and we have been able to put together a very long-term sustainable debt structure, we were able to remove the restrictions that we had in the past where we trapped all of the cash within the indentures. And so now you will be able to build up some unrestricted reserves. And we are expecting that to amount to $46.2 million at the end of fiscal year 16.
And what's your goal to rise up to? You're trying to get an amount of reserves from a credit standpoint.
The required ones are, that's on the next page, but it's a combination in terms of developing the unrestricted cash on San Joaquin. We pay both for improving our credit, and I don't think we would have a specific number.
There's not a specific number, no.
Well, what that does is it gives the board the flexibility in the future, because there is the coverage ratio on this, and it by definition then generates surplus revenue. So that can be used by the board then for any lawful purpose, including pulling back and paying off the debt early, to pull that back sooner than the current 2050 projection.
But also by building up, improving our credit rating, if we wanted to refinance it lower, straight down the road, do that.
You start paying off debt at certain points. That's one way to do that. Yes.
Take off the high cost.
Okay. Next slide. And then in addition to the unrestricted reserves, we also have a number of reserves that are required by our bond indentures. And so for the Foothill Eastern, these are the reserves that you see, the largest of them being our debt service reserve funds of $220 million. And these are fully funded as required. Next slide. And on the San Joaquin, we also have fully funded reserves that are very similar to the Foothill Easterns, the largest being the debt service reserve funds. And also on the San Joaquin, we have a Caltrans maintenance facility commitment of $8 million. Slide. And then on San Joaquin, we also have a supplemental reserve that resulted from the recent refinancing. And this is one that we are still funding, and our requirement is $93.1 million, but we are expecting to have it at $44.9 million by the end of fiscal year 16. And this is where half of the surplus revenues will fill up this fund until it's filled, and the other half are what go into your unrestricted funds. And so the recommendation, each agency has their own staff recommendation, but it's to approve the budget, and with all of the other items that are listed on the resolution, that the recommendation would be to approve that next week at the board. And here's the San Joaquins. So next steps are the board meeting next week where we will need to approve the budget.
Can you draw off the budget unrestricted net asset valuation? So there's a lot of restrictions, right? So just being able to see after all the restrictions, what are the net assets still available for cash general? Can you do that off a budget, or do you have to wait until the year?
Yeah, and really then, I think you're talking mainly about, yeah, I mean, it would be a combination of looking at that, but the unrestricted cash is really a big portion of that, because keep in mind, the reason if you look at our financial statements, our asset, we don't have an asset because the state of California owns the roads. So when you look at that, we're paying the debt. So we're collecting the tolls and pay back the debt to build the roads. And so really then, you want to look at kind of...
Okay. I get it. I've never worked with anybody that doesn't own their own assets. So
yeah, it's...
The only thing we own really is this building.
I mean, there are a number of
whole
assets, but that's why the financial statements would be different.
Michael, you know, for board action.
A committee action.
Moving this on to the board for vote.
What I'm after is, based on the discussion, if there's any comments that people would like to see different for next week, if you could just provide us, like I said, we'll update it.
So we don't need an official motion today?
The only motion would be just approve.
Recommend to approve.
in principle.
I think happens anyway, and we only need a majority for that, but we don't need to do that vote today, so I don't think we can do that.
I just would like to make a comment. You've just done a great presentation. I really appreciate you having this open forum for us, because it does allow us to talk about our maybe things that may be a frustration, but you've cleared it up, at least for several issues, and I really appreciate your effort. It was very good.
Thank you.
We adjourn?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go. An hour.